What you think about in those final moments before sleep doesn't just fade away. It sinks deep into the architecture of your mind, becoming the blueprint for who you'll be when you wake. This isn't philosophy or wishful thinking. This is how your brain actually works. The last thoughts you entertain before surrendering to rest are the raw materials your subconscious uses to reconstruct your reality overnight. They shape your dreams, color your emotions upon waking, and silently program your responses to the next day's challenges. Most people approach sleep as an escape. They see it as a blank space, a void between days where nothing of consequence happens. But the ancient Stoics knew better. They understood that the night was a workshop, a sacred space where the mind continued its most important labor. While the body lay still, the spirit was at work, sorting, sifting, and shaping the essence of who you're becoming. Marcus Aurelius didn't just close his eyes hoping for the best. He used the threshold of sleep as his most important training ground. He would review his day with ruthless honesty, examining where he had fallen short of his ideals and where he had shown strength. This wasn't self-punishment, it was precision training. He was programming his character one night at a time. Consider how you typically end your day. Is it with purpose or with exhaustion? Do you consciously transition from waking to sleeping? Or do you simply collapse when your energy runs out? There's a profound difference between these two approaches. One builds resilience, the other merely postpones fatigue. When you collapse into sleep, you're bringing all the day's unresolved tension with you. The unfinished arguments, the missed opportunities, the quiet anxieties. They don't magically disappear when you close your eyes. Instead, they become the ghosts that haunt your subconscious, weaving themselves into your dreams and emerging as that vague sense of dread that greets you in the morning. This is why so many people wake up feeling like they never truly rested. They may have been unconscious for 8 hours, but their minds were never at peace. They spent the night processing yesterday's chaos rather than preparing for tomorrow's possibilities. Their sleep wasn't restorative, it was reactive. And this pattern, repeated night after night, creates a foundation of chronic anxiety and mental clutter that becomes increasingly difficult to clear. The Stoics recognized this danger centuries before modern psychology gave it a name. They developed what we might call sleep hygiene, but with a crucial difference. Their focus wasn't merely on physical rest, but on spiritual and mental preparation. They saw the hours of sleep as precious training time that shouldn't be wasted. Seneca would deliberately calm his mind before bed, releasing any anger or resentment from the day's events. He understood that carrying negative emotions into sleep was like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. The toxicity would linger in his own system, corrupting his rest and weakening his resilience. Epictetus, born a slave, knew better than most how little control we have over external circumstances, but he also knew that within our own minds, we have absolute sovereignty. His nightly practice involved examining what was within his control and what wasn't, then consciously releasing his attachment to outcomes. This wasn't passive resignation, it was strategic focus. By clearing his mind of what he couldn't influence, he made space to strengthen what he could, his own character, his responses, his inner peace. This ancient wisdom finds surprising validation in modern neuroscience. We now understand that during sleep, particularly during REM cycles, our brains aren't just resting. They're actively consolidating memories, processing emotions, and reinforcing neural pathways. The thoughts and emotions we dwell on before sleep receive preferential treatment in this nocturnal processing. They're tagged as important, rehearsed, and woven into our mental models of the world. Essentially, what you think about before bed becomes what your brain practices all night long. This has profound implications for your quality of life. If your final thoughts are anxious, Your brain will spend the night rehearsing anxiety. If they're resentful, you'll wake up with resentment already simmering beneath the surface. But if your final thoughts are grateful or purposeful or calm, your brain will strengthen those pathways instead. You're not just thinking, you're training. Every night is a training session for the person you'll be tomorrow. So how do we transform sleep from passive collapse into active training? The answer lies in a simple but powerful practice the Stoics called the evening examination. This isn't a complex ritual requiring hours of meditation or elaborate journaling. It's a focused, intentional review that takes just minutes but yields transformative results. The practice consists of 3 essential questions, asked with honesty and without self-judgment. First, where today did I live according to my values? Look for the small victories. Maybe you resisted gossiping when it would have been easy to join in. Perhaps you completed a difficult task you'd been avoiding. Maybe you showed patience when you felt like snapping. These moments often pass unnoticed in the rush of the day, but they're where character is forged. By acknowledging them before sleep, you're telling your subconscious, this is who I am. This is how I want to show up in the world. You're reinforcing the neural pathways of your better nature. Second, where did I fall short? State it plainly, without drama or self-flagellation. I spoke harshly when I could have been kind. I avoided a difficult conversation. I wasted time on distractions. The goal here isn't to punish yourself, it's to observe with clarity. You can't correct a course you won't acknowledge you're on. By naming your shortcomings without judgment, you create the possibility of different choices tomorrow. You're not a failure for missing the mark. You're a learner gathering data. Third, and most important, what am I carrying that I can put down? This is the release valve. Name the specific burdens. Worry about tomorrow's presentation. Resentment from that email exchange. Regret over what I didn't accomplish. Feel their weight in your hands and then consciously set them down. Visualize placing them outside the door of your mind. You're not denying their existence. You're choosing not to carry them into your rest. This single act can transform your sleep from haunted to healing. This 3-question practice creates what psychologists call cognitive closure. It signals to your brain that the day is complete. The events have been processed, the lessons extracted, the burdens released. With this closure, your mind can truly rest instead of continuing to churn through unfinished business. You're not just sleeping, you're integrating and resetting. But the Stoics took this practice even deeper with what they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This sounds pessimistic, but when practiced correctly, it's perhaps the most empowering mental exercise ever devised. It involves consciously imagining potential challenges or losses, not to dwell in fear, but to build resilience and gratitude. Here's how it works. Before sleep, you briefly imagine a specific challenge you might face tomorrow, not in vague, catastrophic terms, but with concrete detail. If you have a difficult meeting, you imagine walking into that room and maintaining your composure. If you're facing a demanding task, you visualize approaching it with focus and competence. You're not worrying, you're rehearsing. You're building neural pathways for resilience before you need them. Even more powerfully, you can briefly imagine the temporary nature of what you cherish. You consider what it would be like to lose your health, your relationships, your security. You don't dwell in this space, but you touch it briefly and then return to the present moment. When you do, something remarkable happens. Ordinary things become extraordinary. The roof over your head becomes shelter. The person sleeping beside you becomes a gift. Your next breath becomes a miracle. This practice doesn't create fear. It incinerates taking things for granted. It forges a gratitude that's unshakable because it's born not in plenty, but in conscious awareness of life's fragility. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. Despite being emperor of Rome with more power and luxury than almost anyone in history, he regularly reminded himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't morbidity, it was the ultimate prioritizing tool. By keeping life's temporary nature in mind, he focused on what truly mattered, living with virtue, integrity, and purpose right now. This practice has a profound effect on sleep quality. When you approach rest with this deep-seated gratitude and acceptance, you're not fleeing from your day. You're integrating it into a larger perspective. The small irritations that might have kept you awake lose their power. The anxieties about tomorrow find their proper proportion. You sleep not to escape life, but to engage with it more fully after renewal. Another common obstacle to restorative sleep is unresolved anger. It's a hot stone in the chest that many people carry to bed, believing they're somehow punishing the person who wronged them by clutching their resentment. But the Stoics understood a fundamental truth. Holding onto anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The toxicity circulates in your own system, disturbing your peace, corrupting your rest, and weakening your resilience. Seneca wrote extensively on anger, calling it the most hideous and frenzied of all the emotions. He observed that no plague has cost the human race more. Before sleep, he would specifically examine any anger from the day, asking himself, "What part of me feels threatened? Is it my pride, my sense of fairness, my desire for control?" By tracing the anger to its root, he often found it began to dissipate. Anger, examined with honesty, frequently reveals itself as fear in disguise. The Stoic practice for releasing anger before sleep involves 3 steps. First, acknowledge the emotion without judgment. I am feeling angry about X. Second, investigate its origin. What value of mine feels threatened? What story am I telling myself about this situation? Third, consciously release it. This anger does not serve my peace. I choose to set it down now. This isn't about excusing harmful behavior. It's about reclaiming your own peace. You release the anger not because the other person deserves forgiveness, but because you deserve to sleep. This release becomes easier when we employ another Stoic technique, the view from above. When a problem feels overwhelming, when anger feels justified and consuming, the Stoics would mentally zoom out. They would imagine rising above their immediate circumstance, seeing their home as one among many, their city as a small pattern of light, their country as a fragment of a continent, the earth as a pale blue dot in the vastness of space. From this perspective, our problems don't disappear, but they find their proper proportion. What felt like an ending becomes a single chapter. What felt like an insurmountable wall becomes a stone on the path. Practicing this view from above before sleep has a remarkably calming effect on the nervous system. It activates the parasympathetic response, the rest and digest mode that's essential for deep, restorative sleep. It reminds us that while our challenges are real, we are part of something vast and enduring. This perspective doesn't diminish our experience. It contextualizes it. We are not the storm. We are the awareness that contains the storm. All these practices converge on a single physical anchor, the breath. The Stoics may not have used the language of modern mindfulness, but they understood the power of breath as a bridge to the present moment. Your breath is always here, always available, always neutral. It doesn't require belief systems or special equipment. It simply is. And in its rhythm, we can find our way back to center when the mind has wandered into anxiety, anger, or regret. Before sleep, your breath can serve as the perfect transition tool. Instead of moving straight from screen to pillow, try spending just 2 minutes focusing solely on your breathing, not trying to change it, just observing it. Feeling the cool air enter, the warm air leave. noticing the pause between. In this simple act, you're telling your nervous system, we are safe, we can rest now. You're shifting from sympathetic activation, fight or flight, to parasympathetic, rest and digest. You're creating the physiological conditions for deep, healing sleep. The cumulative effect of these practices, the evening examination, the pre-meditation of challenges, the release of anger, the view from above, the conscious breathing, is nothing less than a transformation of your relationship with night itself. Sleep stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you do with purpose. The night stops being a blank space between days and becomes a creative workshop where you actively participate in shaping who you're becoming. This transformation has practical consequences that extend far beyond better sleep. People who practice these techniques consistently report waking up with clearer minds, calmer emotions, and more focused intention. They approach their days not from a place of reaction, but from a place of response. They're less easily thrown off course by minor irritations because their foundation, forged in the quiet of the night, is more solid. This isn't to say that life's challenges disappear, they don't. But your relationship to them changes. Difficulties become less like threats and more like training opportunities. You begin to see, as Marcus Aurelius did, that the obstacle is the way. What might have ruined your day becomes material for building resilience. What might have triggered anger becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Your nights become where you integrate these lessons and reset for the next round of growth. Perhaps the most profound benefit of this Stoic approach to sleep is what it reveals about what we truly own. In a world that encourages us to define ourselves by our possessions, our achievements, our social status, the Stoics point to a different truth. We own very little externally. Our health can fail, our wealth can disappear, our relationships can change, our reputations can be damaged. All these external things are on loan, temporary, subject to forces beyond our control. But what we do own completely and irrevocably is our character, our integrity, our courage, our capacity for kindness, our commitment to truth. These are forged in moments of choice, and nowhere do we have more opportunity to shape them than in the quiet space between days. When we consciously examine our actions, release what doesn't serve us, and set intentions for who we want to be, we're investing in the only wealth that cannot be taken from us. This is what the Stoics meant by the inner citadel. It's the fortress of character that we build through consistent practice, through nightly examination, through conscious choice. No external event can breach its walls unless we open the gates from inside. Sleep, approached with Stoic intention, becomes the time when we reinforce those walls, when we check the foundations, when we prepare to meet whatever the next day brings from a position of strength. The practical implementation of this philosophy doesn't require dramatic lifestyle changes. It begins with small, consistent actions. Start with just 5 minutes before bed. Put away the screens, sit comfortably, breathe consciously, ask the 3 questions. Release what you're carrying, that's it. The transformation comes not from the complexity of the practice, but from its consistency. Night after night, you're telling your mind what matters. You're training your brain to focus on what builds rather than what depletes. Over time, you'll likely notice subtle shifts. You might wake up with solutions to problems that seemed intractable the night before. You might find yourself responding to provocation with patience that surprises even you. You might discover a deeper sense of gratitude for ordinary moments. These aren't miracles. They're the natural results of training your mind during its most receptive states. This approach to sleep also changes your relationship with time itself. When you use the night for integration and preparation, you stop seeing days as disconnected units and start seeing your life as a continuous thread of growth. Yesterday's lessons inform today's actions. Today's experiences become material for tonight's reflection. There's a rhythm, a cadence to personal development that most people miss because they're not utilizing the natural reset button that sleep provides. The Stoics would remind us that we have a finite number of nights in our lives. Each one is an opportunity either to collapse in exhaustion or to engage in the quiet work of building character. Each one is a choice point. Will we let the day's events determine our state of mind, or will we use the night to reclaim our inner sovereignty? Will we surrender to mental chaos, or will we impose order through conscious reflection? This isn't about achieving some perfect state of nocturnal enlightenment. It's about the direction of travel. Some nights, you'll do the practice perfectly and still sleep poorly. Other nights, you'll skip it entirely and sleep soundly. The point isn't perfection, it's orientation. Are you generally moving toward being more intentional with your mind or more passive? Are you treating your consciousness as something that happens to you or as something you actively shape? The modern world is designed to keep us in reactive mode. Notifications, news cycles, social media feeds, they all train us to respond to external stimuli constantly. The Stoic sleep practice is the antidote to this conditioning. It's reclaiming the night as a time for proactive inner work. It's shifting from being shaped by your environment to shaping your inner environment regardless of external circumstances. This shift has never been more needed. With anxiety rates climbing and attention spans shrinking, the ability to restore our minds through intentional rest is becoming a survival skill. The Stoics developed these practices in times of war, political turmoil, and personal loss. They weren't seeking comfort, they were seeking strength. They understood that a calm mind isn't a luxury, it's the foundation of effective action in a chaotic world. Your mind is your most powerful tool and your constant companion. How you care for it during the night determines how well it serves you during the day. The Stoic practices we've explored aren't just sleep tips, they're character-building exercises. They're ways of aligning your nightly renewal with your deepest values. They're methods for ensuring that who you are when you're unconscious is consistent with who you want to be when you're awake. As you begin to implement these practices, be patient with yourself. The mind has likely spent years in untrained patterns. Changing these patterns is like changing the course of a river. It happens gradually through consistent pressure in a new direction. Some nights will feel effortless, others will feel like work. This is normal. The value isn't in any single night's practice, but in the cumulative effect of showing up again and again. Notice what changes. Maybe you'll start remembering your dreams more vividly as your subconscious becomes more active in integrating daily experiences. Maybe you'll find yourself waking up just before your alarm as your body's natural rhythms reassert themselves. Maybe difficult emotions will arise during the practice. This isn't failure, but the mind releasing what it's been holding. Welcome these as signs that the process is working. Over weeks and months, the most significant change might be one you can't easily articulate, a deepening sense of inner coherence. The person who reflects at night, who sets intentions, who releases burdens, begins to act with more consistency during the day. There's less internal conflict, less second-guessing, less energy wasted on mental clutter. Decisions come more easily because they emerge from a clear value system that's regularly examined and reinforced. This coherence is what the Stoics called living in accordance with nature. It doesn't mean retreating to the wilderness. It means aligning your thoughts, values, and actions with your essential nature as a rational, social being. It means recognizing that your mind is your governing faculty and that caring for it through practices like intentional sleep isn't self-indulgence, it's your primary responsibility. The night approached this way becomes a sanctuary, not an escape from reality, but a deeper engagement with it. In the quiet dark, without distractions or performances, you meet yourself most honestly. You see where you've strayed from your path and where you've walked true. You feel what you're carrying that isn't yours to bear. You remember what truly matters, and you emerge each morning not just rested, but renewed, realigned with the person you're committed to becoming. This is the promise of Stoic sleep, that your nights can be more than blank spaces between struggles. They can be where you integrate your experiences, where you heal your wounds, where you train your resilience, where you forge your character. They can be, in Seneca's words, where you withdraw into yourself to emerge stronger for others. The world will continue to be chaotic. Challenges will continue to arise. But with a mind restored through intentional rest, you'll meet these challenges from a different place. Not from depletion, but from renewal. Not from reaction, but from response. Not from fragmentation, but from coherence. Tonight, when the day is done and the world grows quiet, remember, you have a choice. You can collapse into sleep, or you can engage in the quiet work of building yourself. You can let the day's events determine your state of mind, or you can use the threshold of sleep to reclaim your inner sovereignty. You can treat the night as empty time, or as the most important training ground you have. Your mind is waiting for your direction. What will you tell it?